So I'm talking to you today from a bunker in the Dallas-Fort Worth airport because I just flew in for an education conference today, and kind of where we can take what we've been doing within New Mexico to the Texas markets, where we have a few foothold accounts there now. And so really what I want to tell you kind of quickly is what's the Build with Robots story, and kind of take you through it through the eyes of our customers, because that's kind of when you develop a technology, you really want to be able to empathize with your customers and be able to see it from that way. So, the problem is really well established, right? There's, in fact, there's now a call for an Operation Warp Speed for clean indoor air. And that's a huge push that will be coming out in the next couple of years. But it's been coming out for even before COVID, because you might not be aware, but there's been a 30-fold increase of influenza in the United States since 1990. And so all respiratory diseases are being pushed in a much greater piece. And you may have missed it, but University of Michigan closed down this year for not for COVID, but for influenza. So really, we see people coming to us for around the pandemic, but really why they stay and why they deploy systems is keeping their workforce and their kind of patrons healthy. And I really want to take this into one sub-market. We're focused within airports, education markets, as well as arenas, and we have great case studies in each one of those. But I want to take the rest of this talk really kind of focusing on what we've done within the education market. And if you look at this report that was a study of a survey of 150,000 parents, it turns out that 50% of American children missed 3 days or more of education in January of this year. So if we thought, hey, the COVID was behind us, or the impact of disease was behind us, it's not. Kind of a mantra that people who know me, I really believe that it takes a community to build a successful startup. We've over 50% of our team has had some training at some time at the University of New Mexico. We've had numerous projects with Sandia National Labs, and kind of highlight today is a project that was a leveraged NMSBA with our companies of the bioscience centers and the fat pipe, but also economic development has been a big player for us, and then also Albuquerque economic development. But I don't want to miss the Sunport. The Sunport stood up as our first customer. And one of those things that's a problem in New Mexico is that you don't have customers locally that have any gravitas. And so being able to work from the Sunport from really almost day one, and working extensively with their custodial teams and designing what our solution, it was great because we were actually able to understand their workflows. And last week we were filming at both of the Houston airports where we've been deployed, and we'll have a press release and you'll see videos and that coming in the next couple of weeks. So in terms of community impact, really think of this as the beginning of 2020 we started. Now we have 24 full-time high-wage jobs. We've raised $5 million in equity, and really we went about this a little bit differently. We really wanted to have an impact in New Mexico, so we've raised from a lot of New Mexico angels because we want to put that money back into the economy of New Mexico. Really, we have schools, airports, and arenas protected nightly. We've done an extreme amount of STEAM, or STEM plus arts outreach to schools around the state, as well as even in Texas and other regions, because it's really important to engage them at that side. But when we deploy these robots at a school system, they actually get to see STEM and work. And so that's actually been a really great motivator in terms of those education pieces. And so we're always building out in terms of building coalitions between the states stakeholders. And I really want you guys to take that to heart, because in the end, my request is, hey, connect us into the schools that you think should stay open, but also in terms of helping us identify other opportunities. So really what we've done is we've taken science and engineering to really allow the education space to focus on education. And really kind of the problem is if you can keep the students and teachers and staff healthy, that allows them to focus on the education. And that's really important because the impact isn't just in the classroom. So when teachers and students and staff get sick, all the people around them suffer. So you remember when your first kid went to school, I certainly did, we called them vector 1, and our second one went to school, we called them vector 2, because they would bring back every infectious disease from the schoolyard to the house. But when kids get sick and miss school, parents and teachers face a lot more pressure, right? Because one, teachers have to come up with makeup work, but the other piece is the biggest impact in terms of a student's education is their contact time. So if they don't have contact time, they're not learning. And we've actually seen that in spades with the COVID push. The other side is, think about parents. Parents, in terms of when a kid is sick, they can't go to work, or they have to come up with an alternative way in which to be able to keep that kid learning, but also in terms of how do they keep them safe? And for lots of essential workers, there's not an option. So administrators were left for like kind of very few tools in which to be able to think about this. And really kind of tools that they're things that we're doing, hiring more staff. Trying to hire anybody right now is really difficult. So that led to unforeseen tasks, put lots of pressures on the teachers. Remote learning really didn't work, and we actually seen the repercussions. And actually, to think about it, third graders right now, the last time that they actually had a real full school year, they were kindergartners. So just put that in the mindset. That's the time when they're learning to read. The hybrids, inconsistency for kids, parents, really tough. And then it led a lot of teacher frustration and burnout. And I'm sure you've seen reports on this. So with Build with Robots, with the really support from our community, has developed a solution to efficiently and effectively and economically keep places clean and healthy, and 10,000 times more effective than wiping down the facility. So what does that do? Well, we've actually got studies now that show that that reduces absenteeism by 49% within a school system. It's actually cut down on the absenteeism at the Sunport in terms of the janitorial staff, because we make the spaces safe for them to enter to clean. So we built Breezy 1, which is a robot that can actually go and disinfect over 150,000 square feet per hour. And we're using a disinfectant that has a long history from Sandia, and then has led into the private sector and has been deployed in many different places, but it's also green certified. It's a really safe platform, and it reduces cleaning costs, or the disinfecting component, by 75%. So what we do with this AMR is really create a map. And this really is a pretty efficient process. So just to context, most of you guys have been at the Albuquerque Sunport at one point or another. The whole airport was mapped within 3.5 hours. So 3.5 hours later, we know where every single garbage can, door open, drawer stop, pillar is within that airport. And then the robot gets a route set in terms of disinfecting. And what's really powerful there is that we're actually able to measure the effectiveness of what we do. So we do ATP testing, but we've actually done a ton of kind of collaborative testings with Sandia National Labs, where we're looking at viability of actual virus counts as well as the bacteria. And so been able to show that effectiveness. And so when we go into a facility, we actually go and conduct the test to actually verify that we're actually doing it. You know, the disinfectant has been based off 30 years of work by Sandia, and with the goals in mind of safety, a full spectrum effectiveness, a low environmental impact. And so you really need to have that green certification and ease of use. We have another project with Sandia now, trying to work on a next gen disinfectant, because there's never going to be a single disinfectant that does all different applications, but there's some really interesting cross applications here. So on this, I'm going to show you a video that comes from St. Mary's School. The reason why I'm going to show it is I think it's really important to think about it from our customer's perspective so that you can get your arms around it?
Our relationship with Build with Robots began shortly after the onset of COVID, and it wasn't long within meeting. We both determined we wanted the same thing. We wanted our kids in school face to face with their teachers. My name is Becky Sanchez. I'm the principal of St. Mary's. What we noticed with having a disinfecting robot was that our nurse visits went down, our attendance went up with not just our students, but our staff as well. And all of that happened with a boost of enrollment. So those were very significant factors for us in deciding that having a robot that was disinfecting and keeping our kids safe was crucial to our success.
So what's really unique with that story is that it kind of gives a kind of a case point, is that all of our customers want to tell what we do for them to their customers. So you'll see the Houston Hobby and George Bush each putting out their own videos in the next week in terms of telling the rest of the public what we've done so that they can tell their customers, but also their employees, what they're doing to keep them safe. What's been really interesting is that, robotic companies have really had a hard push because they get seen as taking away jobs. And what's funny is that we've really put the workers at the center of what we do. And so I can show you case studies and evidence and interviews that we've done with numerous custodial workers where they'll say, hey, this actually gave us reason to come to work because our employers looked after our safety and our care. And then also it gave them a way in terms of they had ownership over a pretty high-tech piece of equipment so that they can actually talk to their family about this is part of what I'm doing. And so that's been a really nice story. What's kind of the unspoken piece here is, talk to a school system in Missouri. There wasn't 57 schools in the school district. They were down 57 custodial staff. Talking to the airports at Houston Hobby and George Bush, each of them were 40% understaffed in terms of where they want to be. They can't hire the people. And so this is a tool that actually that's allowing them to use it as a recruiting tool, but also in terms of a way in which to engage people in that conversation of, hey, we look after you as our employees and we put this forth. And so actually interesting in terms of where we go from here is really identifying places that, there's some places, especially in like the Bay Area, where people have been remote this entire time. And so they're doing these big back to work initiatives. And this is a tool that actually allows them to do that. In terms of our IP, it really lies in kind of where the nexus of where the robotic pieces go and the chemistry, because that's the kind of the combination and the magic. We see competition from UV robots. It really is not a competition because they can't do the surfaces that you touch because they're getting only the front surfaces, right? They're not getting the shadows or the carpets or the drapes or the walls or the handles that you're grabbing. They also are pretty slow. So we competed at the Houston Hobby and we have 6 robots between Houston Hobby and George Bush. No additional people were required. The competitive bid from the UV robots is that they were going to need 23 robots, but they're going to have 100 new staff to run those robots 24/7. That doesn't work in an operational environment where that's the big asset. So my big ask today is, hey, point us to schools, because that warm introduction, even though we're in New Mexico and lots of people within the startup companies world says that, you got a lot of press out there. Yeah, but I'm not still getting that principal in Rio Doso, or I'm still not getting that principal that's or the school board member at the nice part is we've got a story that's not political. It's not asking for kids to put masks on or asking for vaccinations. We're asking a way in which to build a safer environment for our kids. So that's my ask.
Thank you, Matthew. Really appreciate that. We have time for one quick question from our sharks.
Yeah, my question is, what's the business model? Are you selling the robots, or is there what's?
Yeah, great question. So depends on the color of money that the customer has. So we'll either CapEx with a service model, or we'll do a RaaS model, which is a SaaS, but it robots as a service.
Yeah.
And it's really about 50-50 in terms of our market breakdown.
Okay, thanks.
So we'll book about 10 million this year.
Oh, great.
Okay, great. Mike, do you have a quick question? I'll give you the opportunity to ask.
Matthew, I can't help you with outreach to schools. I think that's what you're asking for, so I'm not really helpful there.
Well, the other place in terms of for thinking about it is, the private equity world, in terms of that's our next step in terms of the next funding round. And the reason being is there's a lot of movement within the private equity world of doing consolidation of these service companies. And service companies within the space are Fortune 100 companies in the US, right? So they're huge different companies, but there's private equity companies that are doing roll-ups of these firms. What we do is provide a really robust technology underpinning to those same entities. So that roll up all of a sudden now has a technology platform. So things that I didn't talk about today were like, we have a robust AI platform, but also a kind of you can tell, hey, this room has been disinfected at this time, and you can push it out to the customers. So you can actually see that in real time.
Great.
So thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Matthew. Thank you, Sharks. We'll move on to our next speaker. It's Dr. Craig Gifford with NMSU. He'll be talking to you today about bovine respiratory testing.